folks. My name is Mo Amir, and this is VANCOLOUR, British Columbia's bona fide culture and politics TV talk show right here on Check and Check Plus. We're also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Tonight, housing prices in BC are still ridiculously high, and the cost of renting is also ridiculously high. So after 4 years of British Columbia's speculation and vacancy tax, did this tax have any impact on our white-hot real estate market? Vancouver-based journalist for the Tyee, Jen St. Dennis, joins us to share her findings. But first, the federal government announced that effective January 31st, 2023, British Columbia will be the first jurisdiction in North America to decriminalize the possession of certain illicit drugs, including opioids and methamphetamines, up to 2.5 grams of personal possession, in an effort to reduce stigma and direct individuals to recovery. But will this help stop the drug poisoning deaths where about 6 people in this province die every day as a result of a toxic drug supply? Here to explain the impact of this decision is the host and executive producer of the Crackdown podcast, where drug users cover the war on drugs as war correspondents. He is Garth Mullins. Garth, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Hey, Mo. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. So, the federal government, almost reluctantly, announced that the personal possession of illicit drugs up to 2.5 grams will be decriminalized in BC. So folks will no longer be arrested, charged, or even have their drugs seized. You're on the front lines of this public health emergency. You've also been a vocal advocate for safe supply to combat drug poisoning deaths. So is this a big step to stop BC's drug poisoning deaths? What's your reaction?
I mean, it's something we've been fighting for a very long time. You know, like, I'm an old school dope fiend, and I've been to a lot of meetings and done a lot of campaigning for decriminalization going back to the 90s, the late 90s. And so to see a step towards anything to do with decriminalization, to see governments even using that word, that is heartening. Like, I am glad to see that. Because decriminalization, I mean, in your opening there, you said the government's explanation is that it'll reduce stigma and help us get towards recovery. Well, I want decriminalization to take cops out of our lives. Like, if you're a drug user, a criminalized drug user, you just have the cops all over you in a way that's hard to explain to anybody who hasn't had that experience. It really changes things. But will it stop the deaths from the toxic drug supply? No, this on its own won't do that, or not in a big significant way. We still need safe supply. So decriminalization isn't legalization. The drugs will still be illegal. They'll still be manufactured illegally, you know, in a bathtub or a like hoopty lab somewhere. It's still, the contents are still not regulated. The potency is still not known. So we're still facing all of those same problems. And so for us, the fight continues.
Right. And just to be clear, when you say safe supply, you're talking about a regulated source of these drugs where you know exactly what's in them and they get dispensed to drug users.
That's right. I mean, for example, fentanyl, right? The street fentanyl, you never know how strong it's going to be, how potent, how much, what other kinds of crap are going to be in there. But pharmaceutical grade fentanyl, you know exactly how potent it's going to be. Mm-hmm. So as a drug user, you're much better able to give yourself a dose that isn't too high. For the most part, people are, they're trying to use fentanyl, but they don't want to have this random amount that's going to kill them.
Right.
They want something that they know what it is. And we have that. We have pharmaceutical grade, pretty much everything. It's just the rules make it inaccessible to us.
Now, I was a little disappointed from this announcement because I didn't think that there were other initiatives to support it. And, you know, the government didn't really give a clear explanation on how this limited decriminalization alone would stop the 6 drug poisoning deaths a day in BC. Are you getting any sense of urgency or political will from any level of government?
I don't see a sense of urgency, and I don't necessarily see political will. What I do notice is that as the case, as it's always been, is governments can be arm twisted and kind of embarrassed and cajoled and compelled into coughing up concessions. So not giving us what we want, not giving us a program that would solve this thing, but because of political forces that are kind of cornering them, doing something. So in this case, this was something, right? It's not, so it's not nothing. And it's the result of a lot of activism over a lot of years, I think.
Right. And in saying that it's not nothing, it is something, it's definitely not the end of what's needed to be done.
That's right. I mean, so decriminalization doesn't address the toxic drug supply. Decriminalization, if it's done properly, gets the police out of our lives, which I got to say is huge. Also, it can affect some deaths because the fact that we're criminalized means, we lead our lives on the down low, that we have to sort of rush the hits sometimes, that maybe we have to be alone when we're using, that if you're in and out of jail constantly, that affects your tolerance. So right when we get out of jail or after an arrest, that's a very dangerous time for us. That's when you're more likely to overdose. So those numbers could be affected. So that's why I say it's not a total wash for the deaths. But the problem is also that decriminalization needs to decriminalize the amounts of drugs that people are actually using. The feds have chosen a very low number here. So, most of the people of the Vancouver area network of drug users, who are the ones who've been arguing for this for 25 years, they won't be decriminalized. Like our membership won't, for the most part, will be still using amounts that are larger than the thresholds prescribed by the federal government. So it won't apply to us necessarily.
So ultimately, what are the needs of drug users? And do you feel like these needs are actually being acknowledged in consultations and policy discussions?
I mean, the thing is, it's the same with any prohibited substance. And we learned all the lessons we need with alcohol prohibition. When they made it illegal to drink, moonshiners bootlegged random booze that did kill people and make them sick. When we ended it, we don't have people dying from, toxic alcohol, dying in the afternoon when they take a drink anymore, right? So that's what we need to do. And anyone who walks into a liquor store isn't necessarily someone who needs to go to a rehab program or something like that. So it's a lot of the approach to the drug deaths misunderstands the way people use drugs. Like here in British Columbia, people work in the resource sector. Like I used to work in mining and construction. People like to party on the weekends. Maybe that means having a rail of Coke or something like that. That shouldn't kill you. But also that level of drug use doesn't usually send people into being diagnosed with substance use disorder or whatever and eligible for some kind of program. We need to understand that half the people are dying are those kind of recreational weekend warrior users. So we still have this 1980s after school special idea of what a drug user is, what the life's all about, and what the solutions are. I mean, stop the deaths is as simple as just making this prohibition of drugs end, regulating them. Yeah.
I have to ask you really quickly, Garth, are you optimistic in terms of the direction that the federal government is going and that the province is going in?
Well, as I said, the putting decriminalization on the policy agenda is a good step. Unfortunately, though, the things in the overdose crisis are getting worse faster than the government is moving. So it's not like we're in this crisis and it's static. Every year of the crisis has been getting worse. The drug contamination doesn't just get contaminated and stay a certain level. It gets more and more contaminated. The contaminants get more complex. The problem gets harder to solve every year. So the government is now introducing something that we suggested 25 years ago and a tepid version of it. So no, that's just not enough. I mean, this problem is like a snowball that they've been letting roll down the hill for decades. The snowball's gotten huge. It's built up speed. It's going to take major policy moves to stop this avalanche. And a little tinkering around the edges ain't going to do it.
Well, hey, Garth, I'm a fan of your work, and it's always a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Same back at you, Mo. Thanks a lot.
Folks, that was Garth Mullins of Crackdown Podcast. Find it wherever you listen to your podcasts. Now, after some business, let's talk about BC's speculation and vacancy tax. Was it an effective tool in addressing BC's unaffordability crisis? The Tyee's Jen St. Dennis is here to explain. Up next. I'm Mo Amir. This is VANCOLOUR.